everybody, I'm Michael Osinski.
And I'm Tyler Esselman.
And this is This One Goes to 11.
This One Goes to 11. It's a podcast. It's a podcast about music. And we ask people that we love to join us and make their case for what they believe is a perfect album.
So perfect, in fact, Tyler. So perfect.
Mm-hmm.
The 10 out of 10, you know, the rating that a lot of like magazines and stuff give albums. You know how they
usually
like, say 10 out of 10, like pretty standard, right? 10 out of 10, not good enough.
It doesn't cut it.
No, not good enough.
Yeah. So we thought we would put our spin on that. We would break the system. We're disruptors. You know, we disrupt the music criticism mainstream.
Disruptor. That feels like an excellent word to describe what we're covering in this week's episode. But Tyler, who did we invite to come before the Pantheon this week?
We invited he's the man, the myth, the legend is overused, but I feel like it's so apt for our guest this week that you just have to say the man, the myth, the legend. Who is Wesley Toledo? Where is Wesley Toledo? How is Wesley Toledo? These are all questions that I've asked myself with some regularity in the near 11 years that I've known this man. Right now, you might know him as the drummer for Chicago-based psych rock band Post Animal. And he's like a much hotter version of Animal from the Muppets. You know what I'm talking about, Michael?
Oh, I do. I'm a Muppet fan.
Much
Muppets
hotter.
Fan. Yeah.
And Animal's pretty hot to begin with. I would say he's the hottest Muppet, maybe.
We could argue that some other way, yeah.
Yeah. And so he's like a much hotter version of Animal from the Muppets, and he provides the propulsion behind the tight-ass grooves that have seen Post Animal take the American indie rock scene by the scruff of its stupid little neck. Hailing from Nashville, Tennessee, Wes is a force of creative energy. He can act, he can sing, and he makes me laugh like few people that have ever walked this earth. You can watch Wes on tour with Post Animal through June 10th, and their new album is called Love Gibberish. It just dropped, and unsurprisingly, it frickin' goes.
Oh, it goes. Would you say it goes to 11, Tyler?
It absolutely does.
Well, yeah.
This one's fun. This is the guy. He's so much fun, and I think let's get a little taste of what he believes is a perfect album, shall we?
We shall.
Frickin' yes.
Yes. Let's go.
Wes. Thank you. Thank you for praise be. Praise be. Welcome to This One Goes to 11. How's it going, buddy?
Guys, doing really, really well. It's good to see your faces.
Yeah. You look good.
I miss both of you.
You got the flow. You got the flow that I expect.
Yeah, I shampooed it for the first time in a couple weeks today.
For us?
Wow.
And, for you guys, and honestly, mainly for my myself and my scalp. And, you know, to not be like, I just have an itchy scalp when I don't shampoo.
Dude, I remember that from living with you. It's
Yeah. Yeah, I still have it.
Good scalp health. It's underrated.
It is underrated, man. You got to take care of that thing.
You get closer to 30 and that stuff starts to matter even more, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Literally the dirty 30. We're trying to put off the dirty 30 here.
It's coming for you.
By being less dirty.
Yeah.
Well, Wes, I mean, we already know this, but could you just tell our listeners what album you have brought for us today to the This One Goes to 11 Pantheon?
I have brought forth the greatest heavy metal record of all time, Master of Puppets by Metallica, an absolute certified classic.
Yes.
And an album that I just found out today, was the first metal album to ever be put in the Library of Congress.
You are correct. That's true.
So yeah, that's like the first little trivia or a little fun fact about Master of Puppets.
Yeah.
And even Congress was like, damn.
Sleepy Joe was like, that shit goes.
Sleepy Joe Brandon was like, well, that's some good malarkey. Indeed.
Oh,
that is some good malarkey.
It was in 2015, so I guess it was actually Obama. He was like, yep, We'll take some of that.
Wait, they put it in 2015. They put that in the Library of Congress.
Yeah, that was probably Obama's last act as president. He was like,
I don't think that was his last act.
That was his final act.
I'm gonna get Metallica in the Library of Congress if it's the last thing I do.
I'm doing this for the American people.
For the American people, it's only right.
Oh my God. Well, before we give you a chance to make your case, Wes, we have a case for you. A little segment we like to call A Beginner's Guide to Metallica's Master of Puppets in 60 seconds. So Tyler's going to try and introduce our listeners to this band and this album in 60 seconds, and then you get to evaluate how well he did. And you can use whatever scale you choose. It can be, letters, numbers, images, aura colors, like whatever you want to go for.
Okay, great.
Yes.
I love it. Let's go.
All right, Tyler, are you ready?
This was so hard.
It's a tricky one.
Yes. Okay. I'm ready. You got the timer?
Okay. I got 60 seconds on the clock, and time starts now.
Metallica is an American heavy metal band. You might say that Metallica is the American heavy fucking metal band. In 1981, Danish drummer Lars Ulrich placed an ad in an LA paper seeking metal musicians to jam with, to which guitarist James Hetfield responded, and one of the most important and prolific collaborations in rock history was born. The band's first two albums established the thrash metal sound that would make Metallica legends: breakneck tempo, harmonized leads, and epic progressive instrumental tracks. Master of Puppets, their third studio album released in 1986, introduced an even more aggressive and musically complex element to the band's repertoire. Atmospheric, precisely crafted, and skull-crackingly heavy, it peaked at number 29 on the Billboard 200 and would go on to be certified 6 times platinum, and in 2015 be the first metal album to be enshrined in the Library of Congress's National Recording Registry. 36 years of touring, fighting with Napster, and pushing the boundaries of rock later, Metallica remain one of the heaviest, most influential band of MFs to do it, and nothing else matters.
Yes. Yes.
I'm sweating. I'm sweating already.
Dude, your eyes were like...
Yeah, you know me, bro.
So big.
I was in.
Your brain was processing so much information right there. I'm going to give you I'm going to rate this in colors.
Okay.
I'm going to rate it a very lush, saturated, much like the like kind of the orange, like an orangey red sort of hybrid, kind of like the cover of Master of Puppets, and that's a great thing because I love that color.
Orangey
so that was
red,
a great
baby.
description. Yeah, baby.
Nice. Thank you.
This is our first color grade. I appreciate this. I appreciate
on the board.
Yeah, just imagine the most lush orangey red.
Lush,
I don't know what exactly. There's probably a specific name for this color, but I don't know my colors.
Yeah.
Come to find out, every color apparently has a name. Like they just all that's a whole thing.
But how many of those colors does Crayola control? I feel like they've named some.
The big crayon lobby. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to. We just got to get to big crayon.
Yeah, that's
big
Bernie's next
crayon
thing.
lobbyist.
Oh my God.
Bernie's on it. Okay, Wes. So let's start from the very beginning. Like, what would you say is your relationship with music right now? And you're also our first guest who is a touring musician right now. So, how would you characterize your relationship to music these days?
Wow, that's a good question, man. I'm being completely honest. Being a musician and being a touring musician and someone that has music in their life constantly, someone that has music sort of like at the forefront of, just like most of my life, I think that my relationship to music right now kind of has been a little bit of a up and down thing in recent years, just because I think over COVID, the pandemic, it's sort of, I found myself not really interested in listening to music as much. I felt I would say maybe a little burnt out with music. And just because there's so much music coming out these days, and I still feel it a little bit, although I'm in a better place with it now because, you go through the peaks and valleys of everything. But music now for me is, I'm just kind of like, I'm latching on to things that I find to be fresh. Still probably a lot of the same things that everyone kind of like the same like checked boxes that everyone has with music, where they want something that's fresh, something that's like, stimulating, something that kind of hits that unspeakable it factor, that it's something that can sound like other things, but for whatever reason, it has this it factor that makes you like latch onto it. And I don't really like go listening to a ton of music these days, like where I used to be someone that would search a lot for new artists and like what was new, what was being put out, like weekly, monthly kind of thing. And now I just find myself latching on. If I find it and I latch onto it, I'll sit with it for a while, and it'll be something that I'll enjoy for a long period of time. And it's sometimes, you miss things because there's so much music that comes out, and you miss things, then you find it like a couple years later, you dive in and have a good time, and then then you leave it be. And if it's really good, then it sticks with you forever. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of like where I'm at with music right now. I'm always having to give it a little break, where I'll like try to listen to anything for a while. I'll do podcasts or YouTube or whatever to like fill that space. Mm-hmm. But then I'll come right back, like, just like obsessively, and just like listen to music, like, really intensely for months and stuff, and then the cycle continues. So yeah, that's pretty much, that's my relationship right now.
How do you usually listen to music? Are you listening on, are you streaming stuff? You said you're listening, are you a vinyl? You were never really a vinyl guy when we lived together, or when we were living in Chicago together?
No, I was never a vinyl guy. I was, I love listening to music on vinyl, but I really appreciate, one of the things I appreciate about streaming is just like, it's convenient, Yeah. And I'm like someone that's, I guess, kind of can be lazy, and I just like having it at my fingertips, and I can just go from one thing to the other. I don't listen to full albums as much anymore, which is something that I think I want to get back into doing, because I think that there is something really special about listening to like an actual piece of work all the way through, as opposed to just jumping to like the songs that really like do it for you. Yeah. When, you want to, like, we used to be able to like give full albums like their due, and like even the ones that you don't like, even the tracks you don't like maybe as much, they, you give it a chance, and then you find something there. At least that's what before, like, streaming and the internet made our attention spans like, so small.
It is a sickness, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
How were you introduced to Metallica and this album? What's the story of how you discovered this?
I discovered Metallica when I was very young, like five or six. God. Dude, I think I was like, seriously, like I was like, I'd have been a little older when it really when I kind of comprehended it, but it was in that like 5 to 7 range, I'm pretty sure. Kind of turn of the millennia, like, we're like, it's 98, 99. And I hear Enter Sandman, which is like pretty much everyone's like gateway. It's their most popular song. It's like
gateway Metallica.
It's gateway Metallica. It's far from their best song, but it is like it's the gateway song. Heard that and was like, okay, whoa, this is something. Like, it kind of unlocked it unlocked something inside of me, as a young kid, that it unlocked this like real primal, like beast kind of like, this aggressive side. But it wasn't just aggression. It was very passionate, and it was very like lively, and like just had this like buzz to it that was just infectious to me. And Black Album, they're self-titled, was like the first thing that I got into. And it wasn't till I was probably hitting around like 5th or 6th grade, though, that I discovered Master of Puppets. So that's like, we're in like the early 2000s now. And I like kind of get back into Metallica after kind of going off, spiraling into this like, I mean, when I was like I was like Linkin Park and like stuff like that for a while, like real new metal stuff. Like rap metal, like Linkin Park and POD and things like that. Like, and then
we had to. It was that time. That was the time.
We had to do it to him. And then I circled back. Maybe the Black Album. Maybe, there's more Metallica song. There's more to Metallica than just the Black Album. Then I found like Master Puppets and Ride the Lightning. And Master Puppets has always been my favorite. Like, I think that one was the one that just like latched on to me like very deeply, to where I just like became completely crazy about that album in middle school. Yeah.
So, okay, I want to back up. So if you discover them at 5, how?
5 is to be honest, 5 is probably a little, this is where things get a little like, things are, they're a little like fuzzy for me, because it probably wasn't 5. You're probably right. But it was like around 7, like it was young that I heard Metallica for the first time.
But did you discover them by yourself, or like was it on the radio? Like were your parents
on the radio.
Playing it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So my dad, I remember the first time I really absorbed Enter Sandman. I was like 7 years old, and we were driving around, and my dad was basically just like, you should check this. He just told me, he was like, because I think he was starting to see that there was like a streak of like, I liked rock. Like I liked kind of hard rock, like I was into like, he was playing for me, like Zeppelin and like kind of like the more like older radio rock stuff, like Rush and things like that. And he could tell that I was like into, I was into like some like big rock band stuff. And Enter Sandman came on, he heard the dun, 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 and he was like, Wesley, you need to check this song out. he was like my 7-year-old boy,
my son.
Listen to this song, my son, my only son. yeah, it's literally like Mufasa showing Simba the Pride Lands. He was like, this will be you one day. And
your dad's a drummer too, right? Isn't he?
Yeah,
he's
a drummer. Yeah.
Oh God, man, that's strong. That lineage is strong, man.
And my dad really loves the Black Album. He's not like a big Metallica fan, but he loves the Black Album because of the production and like it's like probably the seminal, like it was like when metal went pop. It's like one like heavy metal, not like hair metal, when like real heavy metal like went pop in the early 90s because of that album. Like he understood and liked it and was like, let me show my boy. And then I just lost my mind a couple years later.
I want to insert a memory that I think about when I think about you. I almost always think about, because Wes and I are also big sports fans, and Wes knows I'm the baseball guy, and you're my football touchstone. But I have this image of a story you told me about when they were the Florida Marlins then, when the Florida Marlins won the World Series. I guess it must have been in 03.
Yeah.
And you told me you got so excited that the Florida Marlins won the World Series that you literally banged your head against the couch repeatedly in an extended fashion. And that's like one of the most metal things I've ever heard an 11-year-old do.
That is a 100% true story.
I think about it all the time.
I lost my head, dude.
But that's the energy that was inside you. That was what was unlocked.
Yeah. Oh yeah, just like a real like well of like real like animalistic kind of like aggressive energy that I'm not really an aggressive person and really never have been. But I sort of channel it by like my love for metal music and just heavy. It's not just metal. It's like aggressive sounding music, because it can be like industrial, like it can be hip hop, it can be any of that stuff. And if it's menacing or like dark, aggressive in any way, I probably am gonna like it.
Talk about the darkness a little bit, if you don't mind. Like, was there something about like this kind of, because the storytelling in this album is very clear. Like there's very much an atmosphere of kind of like rage, and they're talking about insanity and dictators and
a lot of death
and war and stuff like that. What did that awaken in you, or like how did you absorb that as a kid?
Speaking particularly with this album, with Master of Puppets, like the relationship or just in general.
I guess in general, because I want to talk more about the other kinds of heavy shit that you were listening to. But I think that kind of imagery, was that something that really spoke to you, or was it more the music? Was
Yeah,
it more?
definitely. Yeah, no, I had an affinity for I've always had an affinity or like a curiosity about just like dark theme, like just like darkness and like just like the depth of like of existence and like especially like pertaining to like the human the human experience and just like the sort of like there's like the physical level of human existence, but really the most prevalent experience that we have is like the inner experience that's like you know we can be in the same physical space but be living two completely different experiences depending on where you're at emotionally speaking. And like I've always had an affinity for like just the what drives people into the more, I guess you could say it's like negative, like the more like darker realms of psychological existence and like the the emotions of like sorrow and also anger, because these are like emotions that have scared me in the past and that I've been afraid to tap into personally speaking. But there's like a way with like metal music that I've been able to enjoy it and absorb it and sort of release, because everyone has aggression, everyone has like a well of passion, and everyone has like their the dark side, the shadow side, whatever. And I think that everyone has also like the things that they like, maybe artistically speaking, that really kind of bring that out in a healthy way, I think. And it can sometimes not be healthy because you can like listen to this stuff and really kind of go down a dark hole and like spiral, and you can really, any kind of music can lead you maybe down a negative path, but it can also really be like cathartic in a lot of ways. And I find that in my life, heavy music has been very cathartic for me. And it's been just a real outlet to find something really beautiful in it, because it is really beautiful. And a lot of people are like immediately turned off by how aggressive metal can be. But really, metal has kind of like, in a way, brought me to my knees, like emotionally speaking, in a very beautiful way that like has made an enormous impact on me.
Do you ever find it comforting? Would you ever use that word to describe it?
100%. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Oh yeah, it's definitely comforting for me. It's because it's kind of paradoxical that it would be comforting, because it's not, But then again, then we you don't want to judge something too much and say that one thing has to be comforting, and because even some ambient music can be extremely unnerving for some people.
Yeah, because even if the music is aggressive or unnerving, I mean, I think about, I was more of a grunge kid. I mean, I like to say that if I had been a heterosexual teenager in the 1980s, I would have been a much bigger Metallica fan. But but as someone who grew up in the 90s, I mean, grunge spoke to me, and they're singing about, very like angsty, depressing things. But when someone sings about something that you can identify with and the music accompanies it in a way, I mean, I feel like comfort feels like the most suitable word for something like that.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. As someone who also loves grunge music a lot, that's like, I found a lot of comfort in listening to like Alice in Chains. And even though that's like a band that is just like so sad, like some of the lyrics, and just the Lane Staley story is like very, very depressing. But there's like, like watching MTV Unplugged, Alice in Chains is like, it almost like, it moves me in not a sad way. It's really like kind of an uplifting thing for me watching them play like Down in a Hole or something. Like that shit just like is very moving in a positive way for me.
I got to put some points on the board for you, buddy. I'm going to give you 300 points for bringing up MTV Unplugged's Alice in Chains, because that I got to revisit. That's an all-timer right there. And then 100 points for metal bringing you to your knees. That's I think it's a really well-made point, because there's something about not judging it right off the bat and allowing yourself to get steeped in something that might at first seem abrasive. that I recognize that in you for sure. And then I'm going to give you 2003 points for the 2003 Florida Marlins because dude, Miguel Cabrera is retiring this year and he's one of the greats. And let's just acknowledge. So you get all those points. And Miguel Cabrera, shouts to you, buddy.
I got another question for you. So I've been re-listening to the album in preparation for this, and I think that I was thinking at one point, I don't know what made me think of this specifically, but I was thinking of what my mom would say if she heard this album. And aside from the fact that it would be too loud, obviously, I feel like a lot of times with heavy metal and with specifically, I guess, thrash metal, which I guess we would call this album that, I think a lot of people think all the songs sound the same. So what would you say to someone who says that? What makes each Metallica song distinct for you?
That's sort of, when someone says that, that's sort of like the sign of you're just like not giving it its due listen, because I've said that about music before, and sometimes sometimes I'm like, I kind of feel like I'm right about this, but Metallica, they literally, like in Master of Puppets, they switch up all the time in Master of Puppets. Like there's like down tempo bangers as well as like some barn burners, like Battery, the first song is like an absolute like barn burner, like let's freaking burn the whole damn place to the ground kind of like circle pit, just very like a staple thrash song. Then you have like a ballad like like Welcome Home Sanitarium that is like starts off with clean guitar, like a clean guitar, slower tempo. It's like, nah, that doesn't sound the same. Sorry,
no, it's still metal. It's
still metal, yeah. But it's it's like a metal ballad, as opposed to like a through and through thrash song, which would be like Battery or like Damage Incorporated, which is the last song.
I thought of you specifically when I was re-listening to Battery, because I was just thinking about how, like, as a drummer, you'd have to be exhausted after playing that song. Just exhausted. It is going so fast.
And if you watch some live videos of Lars, sometimes he sounds exhausted. Sometimes he doesn't sound. Sometimes doesn't sound great, especially. But I'm not a Lars hater, by the way. I know a lot of people are, but I think he was perfect for that band. But yeah, no, it's exhausting playing that kind of music. You have to really you have to be in shape, like literally. You have to because I've never played like an hour long metal set. Like I played in metal bands when I was in high school, but I haven't played in a metal band in over 10 years. Even playing in my band now, which is like way chiller than, it's not metal music. It gets there sometimes, like we can ramp it up, but it's not. Even after doing like an hour and 10, like I feel like pretty tired, you cramp up and, but playing like metal, like especially doing like a 2-hour long set when you're in like an arena and you have all that adrenaline, it's like the adrenaline helps a lot, but by hour and a half in, I can't imagine what that feels like. It's very physically tasking.
Well, that's the interesting thing about your style as a drummer, and I always talk about this with anyone who will listen to. Like whenever I talk about Post Animal with somebody, I'm like, listen to Wes, because it's not to say that your sound doesn't fit the sound. I feel like you guys have really meshed. You guys have really meshed your sounds around each other in a beautiful way over the last 8 years. 8 years it's been, bro. And but there's a metal sensibility to the way that you play. That you've injected into that band that I think really it makes it sound different than other psych rock bands that are on the scene right now. So I think you give it something unique.
Yeah, thank you, man.
So when you first started listening to Metallica, then you weren't playing drums yet, or had you started playing yourself?
I had already started playing. I started playing really young. My dad got me a set. I think it was my 3rd birthday, but I really started playing more when I was like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't really ever serious about drums though until like middle school.
Yeah.
Was when I really started playing a lot. And that's when I started playing like metal stuff and like, rock. I played like a lot of like classic rock, which is like my other love. at that age was the classic rock stuff from probably a decade earlier than
Like
Master of Puppets.
who was on?
Well, when I was younger, it was a lot of it's like very like staple, like I loved listening to Jimi Hendrix and like Pink Floyd. I still love Pink Floyd. Like Floyd has aged better to me than like any classic rock band. I still can listen to Pink Floyd and just be like, this is masterful. I can't say the same with a lot of, like Zeppelin. I can't really get into as much anymore. Although John Bonham is like very influential to me as a drummer, and like Keith Moon from The Who, Rush, Boston, bands like that, like Boston, and like cheesier bands like Toto, and like The Police, and like Phil Collins, like all that stuff, man. Like I ate all that stuff up. I can still listen to that stuff and really love it a lot.
I think that's our first official mention of Toto on the podcast.
Yeah,
that band is so good, man.
They really are. Okay, people, if you ever see Wes after the show, ask him to do his impression of every instrument in Africa by Toto. you will laugh.
I can play the whole song on an invisible keyboard, on several invisible synths set up all around me.
Oh God, Wes, and that lives rent free in my head, as the kids would say. It's one of the best moments of college is when you did. It was like 3 a.m. It was like 3 a.m. We were at the Wolf Den, and you were doing that. You played every instrument in Africa. God love you, man.
I think now might be a good time to cover your standout track.
Yeah.
So could you tell us, Wes, what have you chosen as your standout track from this album?
Disposable Heroes. Sort of a track that I feel like is very slept on for like Metallica. I think it's like one of their best songs. It's one of my favorite songs by them. It is like one of their most like punishing, like aggressive, but also groovy. Like they really do everything in this song to me. It starts off like real like thunderous drums, like the dun 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 dun, very like thrash, like just like a basic thrash kind of beginning. And then it slows down on you like right away. It's like it doesn't like rip into one of those like fast, like galloping beats that a song like Battery would, or like Master of Puppets. It like goes halftime. The halftime, just the drums come in, thunderous, like really, really just like an aggressive song that is like really catchy. But really this song, instrumentally speaking, is one of my favorites. Just the riffs are really sick. For lack of a better term.
It's all you can say, really. What more is there to say?
So, like, one of the main things about this one, though, the lyrical content of this song stands out, and it's about war. It's sort of like it kind of intertwines between, at least to me, intertwines between like a young soldier in a war environment. The first lyric of the song is "Bodies fill the fields I see," and it just kind of immediately like, all right, we're like in a war scenario. It's a very menacing song to me. It always like kind of like it disturbed me a little bit. The realities of war are very much like illustrated in this song, but especially like the chain of command element of war, where you're basically, because like the chorus, it's kind of switches over to like the higher up commanding the young soldier basically to go die cause. It's like, back to the front. You will do what I say when I say back to the front. It's like it really, this song kind of like is a big time critique of a very like vicious critique of war and of the sort of like hoorah, nature of the United States, especially at that time, like, in the 80s, very like patriotic, all the baby boomers had kind of sold out from their hippie philosophies and had gotten jobs and were like, oh shit, I like getting rich, and like we're now conservative, so it's like a weird time in the 80s. And Metallica is right. Yeah, it's like basically
1980s.
like, and it's funny because James Hetfield, like I don't want to judge the guy that much, but like James Hetfield, now that he's older, is a bit more conservative now. So it's kind of like conflicting to me, like listening to him when he's in his 20s, like at just like the peak of his powers artistically, just like very viciously critiquing the war machine. And, yeah, that's like, I would say is probably the best that I can do in terms of describing that song.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, let's give Disposable Heroes a listen. Just so you know, listeners, strap in. About 8.5 minutes, and
yeah, it's a long one.
It goes.
It goes in. It goes in.
That's the end of part 1. If you access this episode via our YouTube playlist, you're about to hear our guest's standout track. If you'd like to jump ahead to part 2, you'll find a link in the description of this episode.